Mr. Carney refuses to pay his taxes, instead hiding his corporate assets in an offshore tax haven.
Isn't it convenient to ask Canadians to chip in more and more of their ever-decreasing slice of the pie, while you yourself conveniently keep your large pie outside of the country? The pillaging of our economy knows no bound. But if you thought that it was bad already, it's about to get much worse with this breaking announcement made today by Carney and the Liberals. My name is Ali Daniel, and this is The Right Call. Like, share, subscribe. Any interaction on this channel helps push the truth out, and maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you're tired of that same old government and media BS and finally want some common sense commentary, well then smash that subscribe button because you're in the right place. Canada is about to join the big boys and get itself a sovereign wealth fund. But just like with everything that Liberals announce, it's not quite what it seems. So stick around because you don't want to miss this.
This is our country. It's your future. And we're building it together. We're catalyzing a series of nation-building projects in energy, in trade, critical minerals, transport, data, and beyond. These projects will make Canada stronger.
How? How? I want details. Give me details. How? Again, big words, little details.
More resilient and more independent. They'll create good jobs and grow our economy, providing the resources that we need to take care of ourselves and take care of each other.
How? Again, how? Those are just high-level claims. How?
And to make sure that all Canadians can share in these benefits, we're creating the Canada Strong Fund, Canada's first sovereign wealth fund. The Canada Strong Fund will invest alongside the private sector in nation-building projects to create wealth for Canadians today and our kids tomorrow.
I get it. The private sector, right? Sorry, did you mean Brookfield? Is this going to be just another quick little scam for Brookfield? I get it. What a wonderfully convenient way to funnel money under the guise of helping Canada. I love it. Man, this guy's crafty. He's really crafty. So let's keep looking.
Canadians are choosing to buy Canadian, to explore Canadian, and build Canadian. Because it's our country, and we're building our future together.
Our country? Mark, why are you lying? You haven't been in this country in decades, and let's call a spade a spade. The second you leave office, if you ever leave office, the way it's going, you know what? He might be in there for the next 20 years. He's going to be on the first flight out of here. Not a commercial flight, that is, of course. It's definitely going to be a private jet. Because, you know, carbon capture and sustainability. Rules for thee, but not for him. And he'll sunset off into whichever country he desires with his offshore account, probably faster than Trudeau flies off to Coachella with Katy Perry, while also tweeting about carbon emissions. Also notice right there on his desk, the little figurine of Sir Isaac Brock. You know, the celebrated general that is a reminder that Canada has beat the Americans and can do it again. Mind you, that's false. It was not Canada. It was very much the Dominion of Canada, aka a British colony, mostly supported by British regulars, aka British forces, but I digress. What are facts important for anyways these days? To me, it's all part of the subliminal messaging that is continuously being pushed that, you know, we are at odds with the United States, and as it's the only way that we can go forward is not to be good with the US. Personally, I think it's just a way that the Liberals stay in power. The more they antagonize the US, the more for some reason Canadians, or at least a subset of the Canadian demographic, rallies behind the Liberals and keeps them in power. So, I mean, no doubt they're going to keep pushing it as long as they can. Now back to the Canada Strong Sovereign Wealth Fund. Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation breaks it down so perfectly. I'm just going to show you instead of quoting him.
Carney wants you to think he just created a sovereign wealth fund. Carney did not, okay? Carney just created a debt-fueled corporate slush fund. Okay, so here's what's going on. Carney just made an announcement. Canada's first ever sovereign wealth fund. No. Here's what's going on. The government is already more than $1 trillion in debt, and Carney just announced he's going to borrow another $25 billion to dump into this new fund, and then the fund is going to subsidize Canadian companies. That is not a sovereign wealth fund, okay? That is a debt-fueled corporate slush fund that gambles taxpayers' money, your money, on corporate welfare. Okay, the whole point of a gold standard sovereign wealth fund like Norway's is to save money, right? Norway saves its oil revenue into its sovereign wealth fund, and then it invests the interest and only invests that interest in projects abroad, right? To help with diversification, to guard against politicians dumping, wasting money on corporate welfare or their own pet projects. In stark contrast, okay, Carney's corporate slush fund is built on borrowed money, $25 billion of borrowed money and then is going to subsidize Canadian companies, picking winners and losers in the Canadian marketplace.
I mean, it's hard to beat that much facts condensed into a little bit, but let's analyze this. Okay, here's the reality of it all. Every sovereign wealth fund is built from surpluses, not debt, surpluses. Norway, which is the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, was built from their oil profits. You know, the one thing that we refuse to really extract and utilize here. Abu Dhabi's, same thing, oil profits. Singapore, incredible, not oil, but rather trade surpluses. Singaporeans are some of the world's best merchants and commerce people there is. It's unbelievable for such a tiny little nation state. But back home here in Canada, our version will be based on borrowed money, debt, effectively. And keep in mind, we're already running a $78 billion a year deficit, which might be even greater once the spring economic update drops tomorrow, which I'll make a video about. So if you're not subscribed already, smash that subscribe button. You don't want to miss it. We're going to dive into the highlights of what that economic update means, what it is, what's hidden, what they don't want you to see, etc. And aside from a $78 billion deficit, which is already insane, we are $1.2 trillion in debt. 1.2 trillions. Just our debt servicing this year was roughly $55 billion. That's not paying down the debt. No. That's just paying the interest on the debt. A way to look at it is like paying the minimum balance on your own personal credit card. Actually, no, that's even worse than that, because on your personal credit card, when you pay the minimum balance, you're still paying a tiny fraction of the principal. Whereas right now, what we're doing is purely paying the interest. We are not paying down the debt, quite the opposite. We are adding just this year 78 billion, and there's a pretty reasonable belief here that due to this new Canada Strong Sovereign Wealth Fund, we'll be adding an extra 25 billion to that deficit. To make matters worse, the federal debt is so large that just servicing that $55 billion a year interest payment is more money than we invest in some government ministries, such as the Department of Defense. We spend more on interest on our debt than we do on national defense, guys. And more than half of this debt was accumulated just in the last decade under, well, you guessed it, the liberal regime. So, a sovereign wealth fund requires wealth. It's kind of in the name. But we don't have wealth. We have wealth potential. We have more potential for wealth than any country in this world, more so than Norway. We have more natural resources. We could be filthy rich, but we aren't. And the reason why we aren't is because we have the most debt that Canada has ever carried in its history. Look, any financial advisor you would go see to plan your own personal finances would tell you, if you are indebted, to start chipping away at your debt ASAP, starting with the debt carrying the highest level of interest all the way to the lowest one, right? It's called the waterfall, for example, right? The waterfall tactic. And that before you invest for your retirement, that before you purchase a new residence, that before you contribute to your TFSA or your FHSA or you name it. First, chip away at the debt, because the debt robs you away from building wealth because it costs you. There's a cost associated to keeping debt, the interest. You chip away at that cost first, then you build wealth. So it's safe to ask, why aren't we instead chipping away at our debt? So let's call it what it is. This ain't a sovereign wealth fund. It's a sovereign debt fund. But leave it to Carney to rebrand the entire thing to make it more palatable to the average Canadian who, being busy with their lives and probably stressed with bills, don't quite have the time to look into the truth behind things.
A sovereign wealth fund is essentially a national savings and investment account. It's designed to grow wealth for future generations of Canadians. Many countries...
Correct. But you know what robs wealth away from future generations of Canadians? Debt. You know, it's projected that eventually the debt servicing will be the single largest line item on our budget. So it doesn't matter how much sovereign wealth fund we have if that debt keeps increasing faster than anything else. People ask me, what should we do? Well, here's a solution. What we should do right now is extract all of our natural resources and build this insane Canadian economic plan based on what the world is, not what we wish it to be, wink, wink, Carney, which is we're a natural resources trove of a nation. Exploit it, pay down the debt, get rid of it. It sucks, it hurts, so be it. Then after that, of course, revamp the entire way the government works, because the inefficiency and the misspending and the redundancy and the, bloat and pudginess in our government, get rid of all of that. And then once that's all done, we've got the cost under control, we got the debt under control, and we got the revenues to where they should be, aka we're exploiting our natural resources, then let's build the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. Canada could be so wealthy. It's actually not that complicated. It leads me to think that Carney over here has no intention to do this. He's not dumb. Okay, Mark Carney is an incredibly intelligent guy, but I've been saying since day one, and this is what fools a lot of people. Well, he's smart, he's educated. Yes, what are his intentions? You could be the wisest guy in the world, but if your intentions are not good, or at least not serving the interests of who you're supposed to represent, then what good does being smart have anything to bring you? Carney is incredibly smart. What I just said is not rocket science. It's very simple economics. So why isn't he doing it? That's what I want to know. Well, I think we'll look into this a little bit. I might have the answer for you.
Many countries that are blessed with natural resources, like Norway, have sovereign wealth funds. Canada hasn't had one until now. The new Canada Strong Fund will give all Canadians a direct stake in building Canada strong. Now, to be clear, just like with the construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway 150 years ago, Canada's major projects will mostly be built by private companies. And just as in the 1870s, the federal government will support these projects through loans, grants, and other incentives.
It's starting to make sense now, doesn't it? Who will these private companies be? What are their ties to Brookfield? Does Brookfield have any vested interest in them? Are they companies that are held within the Brookfield Global Transition Fund that Mark Carney here stands to make a whopping hundreds of millions of dollars worth of carried interest by later in 2030? Are these companies also owned or invested in or at arm's length with some of his friends, perhaps other government ministers? Those are the questions that should be asked by the media, because those are the things that has plagued Canada in the past, with corruption oftentimes coming from a specific party.
And we do this because these projects have wider benefits to our economies, benefits that exceed the private returns. I'll give an example. Expanding the port of Montreal at Contrecoeur will unlock new markets for thousands of Canadian businesses and create hundreds of thousands of jobs for Canadian workers. So, until now, while those wider benefits flow to the Canadian economy, flow to our country, the financial returns of the projects themselves flowed only to those who built and ran them. That changes today.
No, I bet you it won't.
For those Canadians who want to participate in an even more direct way, we will make it easy for individual Canadians to invest in the fund and therefore own a small piece of nation-building projects and share in their returns.
Wait. Isn't that the point of the Sovereign Wealth Fund in the first place? That every Canadian is now going to be forced to participate in it, whether they want it or not. But on top of that, now, he wants to open it up and expects Canadian to take the meager amount of money they have left. Most Canadians don't, because most, 20% plus of Canadians now require food banks. It's insane. So there's no saving rate, okay? As a matter of fact, Canada now has a negative saving rate, which means people are indebting themselves and or chipping away at their savings in order to stay afloat. But anyway, so he wants us to also privately invest in that fund. But why? Why would Canadians do that? Is it smart? Is it wise? Does it make financial sense? See, there's a precedent on that, by the way. So let's break it down. But first,
you keep referencing the Canadian Pacific Railway as a benchmark here, and that was funded by private investment.
Yep.
But a lack of transparency around that financing led to one of the earliest political scandals in Confederation.
Yep.
So I'd like to know about the transparency on this fund. Who is going to manage it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm glad you raised it because
Did you catch that? Did you catch that? Watch his immediate reaction when he's asked this question. It makes him completely uncomfortable. You can see, look, he goes, That's his number one tell. Carney does that every time when he's put in a corner and he's about to lie. And then he touches his nose. That is a dead giveaway. This is any psychologist, any experts in negotiation will tell you. People have tells when they're about to lie or to BS you. And I'm fully convinced, okay? Whatever he's about to say is taken right out of his rear. And to be quite honest with you, it's already making it seem like things are, shady with this fund.
There are lessons in all respects on how, from our past and from the specific example. And I drew out some of the most important ones about partnership with Indigenous peoples, full partnership with workers, and full participation of Canadians alongside. This will be a independent Crown corporation, reports to Parliament, arm's length, as I say, independent, full disclosure, professionally managed, and the investments
that are made will be clear. The objective is to grow wealth for Canadians over the long term.
To grow wealth for Canadians over the long term. No, it's going to be to grow Brookfield's wealth over the long term. Like, let's be honest here, okay? And the fact that he starts talking about Indigenous people, again, this is just deflection. None of what he answered there guarantees there will be no actual corruption or this money will not be used in a slush fund kind of way. Once again, it's not going to go directly to the pockets of Carney, like as a payment, like, oh, here you go. It's going to go through various suppliers and organizations that have at arm's length and or that are owned in part or wholly by shell companies of this shell company, of this shell company, that goes back and flows back to these individuals. It's the oldest freaking scam in the game. And the journalist was correct in her question. The answer, sadly, did not answer that, did not reassure anyone. It will the average Canadian, again, just because it requires a certain understanding of how these things work. And most people, sadly, are not provided this information because the mainstream media does not do their job. It's not their fault directly. It's definitely the people that we entrust in providing this information. But he mentions an independent crowned corporation that will be managing everything. It will be state of the art, the best. Well, again, like I mentioned before, we have a preview of what that looks like because we already have exactly that in Canada managing the Canadian pension plan. And here's a summary of what it actually looks like in terms of performance and in terms of cost. And I hate this. I hate getting started on the CPP because I think it's the biggest scam ever. I hate it with a passion. I absolutely hate the CPP with a passion. And for my Quebec folks, the QPP is the exact same, okay? It's not any better. It's probably even worse. The CPP has underperformed the market while costing you an arm and a leg, a literal arm and a leg, okay? Let me expose it. Currently, the CPP has a net rate of return of 2.7% per year. That's it. The S&P 500, which is a great index of the American market, right? It's the largest 500 companies in the US, has had a 5.76% net rate of return, so inflation adjusted, over its lifetime. You could have literally doubled your return by doing nothing and just letting the market do its thing. So why does it underperform against the market so badly? Well, like I said, in typical Canadian fashion, it costs an arm and a leg to run. $2.9 billion worth of arms and legs, may that be, per year to run. To give you an idea of what this represents, right? The loss, the opportunity cost that you lost by investing money in the CPP instead of just the market, having had the chance to do so. Let's say the annual contribution is $7,000, which is the max you can contribute to the CPP anyways, right? Over a time horizon of 40 years, the CPP's real return, 2.7%, a passive index return, 5.7%. The difference is 3% annually. Well, at the end, your CPP would return $435,000 in terms of total asset size, in terms of total portfolio value, whereas the passive index will be close to $1 million. You're leaving double the money on the table by being forced to invest in a CPP. That is what government control of money looks like. It is inefficient. But if the government of Canada came at me and said, we're going to run this sovereign wealth fund away, the state of Nevada, for example, runs their own pension fund, I'd be all for it. Because this is what the $35 billion fund manager does in Nevada. And I said, fund manager. Yes. One. The answer? Nothing. Steve Edmondson has no coworkers, rarely takes meetings, and often eats leftovers at his desk. With that dynamic workday, the investment chief of the Nevada Public Employees Retirement System is out earning pension funds that have hundreds on staff, or in Canada, thousands. His daily trading strategy, do as little as possible, usually nothing. The Nevada system stocks and bonds are all in low-cost funds that mimic indexes. Mr. Edmondson may make one change to the portfolio per year. He brings lunch in a Tupperware. Great days, he says, are when his wife makes him lunch, a BLT or tuna fish sandwich. Otherwise, it's leftover fish or salads. I don't want to spend $10 a day for lunch, he says. See, that's exactly the kind of public servant I want running any agency in Canada. One that won't even splurge on freaking lunch because he doesn't want to waste $10. In short, the Nevada Fund costs less than $20 million a year to run versus $2.9 billion for the Canadian pension plan. That's money going into the pockets of bureaucrats instead of your retirement. Every year, compounded. And now you understand why I have my major doubts that this Canada Strong Sovereign Wealth Fund, as ever nice of a brand it may sound like, will perform well. It will be a massive scandal waiting to happen. I am convinced of it. It may take years, but in a decade or two, the things that will come out of there will make us shrivel in anger. And I mean, even Grok thinks the same. When asked, Grok, you're an expert financial advisor, would you invest your hard-earned money in a fund managed by the Kenyan government? His answer, no. As an AI without personal funds, I'd advise against it for anyone prioritizing pure financial returns. Sovereign wealth funds like this one, seeded with $25 billion taxpayer money, open to retail investors, often blend economic strategy with policy goals like energy, infrastructure, and minerals. That introduces political risk and potential inefficiencies over market-driven decisions. Private index funds or diversified ETFs historically deliver stronger risk-adjusted performance without the overhead. So now we're made to believe that the sovereign wealth fund won't become a massive, underperforming, costly, and obscure fund. Sure thing. That's the thing with Carney, though. He's great at messaging. I'll give it to him, okay? He's a bit like Trudeau with that. It's actually it's a liberal thing. Great, beautiful words, piss poor execution, which is inadvertently shielded from scrutiny by the media. But what do I mean by shielded from scrutiny by the media? Well, here's a hilarious example.
You are proposing cutting these gas taxes, which will increase demand and therefore inflation. Why should Canadians trust your economic credentials?
Sorry, I don't understand that you're framing there. You say that lowering a tax on gas will increase inflation?
Increase demand for the gas, which, again, could increase inflation.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I've never heard anyone saying lowering taxes on gas could possibly increase inflation.
The media says, why won't the public trust us anymore? We have no credibility. But we are the guardians of democracy. Also, the media. Cutting taxes will increase inflation. What? So let me educate the media. There's three things that cause an inflation: demand pull, cost push, and built-in inflation. Let's talk about the first two. Demand pull. That's when demand exceeds available supply. And this is what she's sort of referring to. And at face value, she's not necessarily wrong per se, but she misses the mark completely. And we'll talk about that in a second. The real reason why demand pull is such an issue is because of money printing. You print money, more money circulates in the economy, and prices go up. It's a bit like issuing more shares of a business. It dilutes everyone else's shares. Well, more money in the economy dilutes everyone else's money by increasing the price of goods and thus lowering the purchasing power of each dollar. Make no mistake, it is the largest driver of demand pull. And the Liberals are great at that. They, to themselves, have doubled the money supply over the last decade. Doubled. Then there's cost push. This is actually where taxes come into play, because the more taxes there is, the more costly things become to produce. This has nothing to do with just the consumer paying a tax at the pump here, okay? For example, there's an entire supply chain, an entire logistic chain that has to pay these taxes for every product and every service you utilize every single day. Taxes to a company is seen in some fashion as a form of cost of goods sold. If you need to produce cheese, let's say, well, you need milk. And to get that milk, you need to transport that milk to your factory. Well, to transport the milk, you require energy, right? Diesel, gasoline. And if there's a tax associated to that diesel or gasoline, that increases the cost of acquiring the milk. Well, do you think the cheese maker doesn't account for these taxes when he decides what the cost of making that cheese is, and as such, how much to charge the consumer after for a profit? Of course, in the end, it's the consumer that pays the tax, which is hidden in the supply chain, in this example, a tax on acquiring milk to make cheese. So being able to cut down on this cost will save Canadians a tremendous amounts of money. And yes, it won't be inflationary. Quite the opposite, actually. It has a deflationary effect. Furthermore, if we go back to demand pull for a second, oil and energy have what you call a highly inelastic demand curve. What this means is that people don't change their habits regarding their consumption of oil because, well, they can't. Most people drive due to necessities. Going to work, going to school, going to an appointment or the doctor's office, etc. It's not a behavior that changes due to the rising or lowering of oil prices. If anything, people will cut in other areas of their lives in order to continue to fund these necessities. That's why it makes the demand curve so inelastic. It doesn't change. Proof, look, the cost of gas has skyrocketed, but people still drive to work as much as they did before. And the same can be applied, by the way, with price cuts. You're not going to suddenly start driving around in circles more often or going to work twice in a day instead of just once in a day because oil is like less expensive. That makes no sense, and it's not how it works. So my question becomes just, how dumb do they think we are? And I think most Canadians would disagree with her because that made no sense.
It would be nice if the media would actually start to ask questions about the government that's in power instead of protecting Mark Carney and his disastrous and costly record, because Canadians deserve a lot better than what they're getting.
But if 4 of your members don't have confidence in you as a leader, including the very conservative Marilyn Gladue, why should Canadians?
Well, because Marilyn Gladue ultimately got more votes under my leadership because I campaigned on lower taxes and a more affordable life than she ever did under any other leader. She's ultimately made a decision to betray her constituents, and obviously that we're not going to let people who betray their constituents decide who's going to be the leader of the Conservative Party. I am staying. I am going to be the leader because I'm the only one who can deliver an affordable, safe, and strong country. And I'm going to continue to fight for the people of this country because now more than ever before, they need someone who will fight for them.
I mean, for real though, like if only CTV and the mainstream media pushed against Mark Carney as hard as they do against the leader of the opposition. I mean, you know, the person who's not in government and hasn't been for a decade. I've said this before, I'll say it again. What's with this incessant, never-ending, continuous attacks against Poilievre? What do they fear? You don't attack someone you don't fear. You don't attack someone that you don't care about. Ugh. And speaking of attacking things that you don't care about, here's Boy Wonder. I love it. He's more and more in the media now. Actually, as a matter of fact, ever since the Liberals got their majority, guess who's made a massive reappearance in the media all the time, in the news and whatnot, on videos? Boy Wonder, Justin Trudeau. I wonder, is he coming back to politics? Is he coming back to the government somehow? Is he going to be running defense? I don't know, but here's Trudeau attacking another thing that you wouldn't normally attack if it didn't scare you.
We all know how much damage the patriarchy has done to women over the past generations. It is now astonishingly clear how much damage the patriarchy is doing to young men.
Right, Trudeau. I'm going to take advice on what it means to be a man from, well, you. Come on. What, the patriarchy is hurting men now? I'd venture to say that is what is actually hurting men, is the opposite of the patriarchy. You're talking about how men are being hurt right now. We live in the most progressive society that's ever existed ever. Men are without purpose because the economy is shot and there's no hopes of having families, and they're told left and right that the things they feel, the desires they have, their dreams and aspirations are toxic. No doubt. That doesn't come from masculinity. That comes from the opposite of masculinity. What young men need are strong leaders that are role models, examples that are stern, tough, but also expect and demand the best for them because they believe in every boy's potential, every man's potential. And they push you to aspire for more, to strive for more, to do what's right, to be a good man. But a good man is a strong man. Being weak is not virtuous, far from it. And to say that the patriarchy was so detrimental for women and now is somehow detrimental to men, while we live, to take the words of Tyler Durden, in a society run by women is, well, a little bit ironic. Wise words. Now, if you've made it to the end of the video and you found some value in this commentary and want to get involved and help with this channel, well, aside from liking and subbing, which is deeply appreciated, I also have a Patreon that allows for you to contribute a small but incredibly meaningful amount to running this operation. I would love to crank out even more videos and do even more commentary. So, without breaking the bank or relying on food banks, if you have $8 a month to spare, well, there's a link in the description for the Patreon, and that will warm my heart. Not as much, though, as it was warming my heart to call out Mark Carney on this video. So click right here and go get yourself a nice little laugh. Until next time, my name is Eli Daniel, and have a good day.